Welcome to Uncovered. I'm Anthony Davis. He is Ron Filipkowski, and together we uncover the MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the mainstream and corporate media. Ron, this shit's getting real. That's, I was trying to come up with an opening phrase, and that's all I can really muster right now. This is an interesting time. The rest of the world is looking on America right now. They see a constitutional crisis. I don't think anybody here yet will acknowledge or accept that that is what has happened. Would you go as far as to say that that's what we're experiencing?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Because they're testing the judiciary, and that's where the crisis part comes in, okay. Because, the Democrats have no oversight. They can't control anything. So after you've fired all the independent IGs at all the different governmental agencies in the executive branch. You put all your sycophants in there who not only will not say no, but are coming up with new ideas to encourage you to do. The only thing that Democrats have is the judiciary. And so they ran to the judiciary and filed a blizzard of lawsuits, which were all successful, every single one. But then you have Trump, Musk, and the right now saying, we need to impeach all these judges or ignore judges' decisions. So that's where the rubber meets the road on a constitutional crisis. Can the courts exert a check, separation of powers, all that? Or is the Trump administration simply going to ride roughshod over the courts and basically just say, hey, you've made your order, try to enforce it, because we're just going to ignore it. And that if that happens, hasn't happened yet, but I think they're hinting at that, doing that. JD Vance suggested it. Then that's when we have a real crisis. Yep.
Well, Trump did this weird press conference yesterday in the Oval Office with Elon Musk. I'll play that clip in just a sec, but maybe we should start with the clip of him talking about the judges, because Trump alluded to this, that he's claiming that, judges are partisan, and therefore we're going to have to look at the judges. Let's take a look.
Hundreds of millions of dollars worth, much more than that, in just a short period of time. We want to weed out the corruption, and it seems hard to believe that a judge could say, we don't want you to do that. Well, so maybe we have to look at the judges, because that's very serious. I think it's a very serious violation.
Firstly, he's the same color as the curtains in the Oval Office these days. Secondly, there are a lot of legal cases being brought forward by Democrats in groups. And, there is talk even of doing class action with the whole country, where all the American citizens form a class action suit against the U.S. government. That's not such a crazy idea.
Well, yeah, I guess it depends on what it is. You have to have, everybody in the class has to have standing over an issue. But yeah, you could, I don't know. A class action is a little different, but you could do lots of different things.
Yes.
But the key part about that is that one line, which is, we're going to have to look at the judges. That's right out of The Godfather. That's a mob threat. It's saying, we need to do something about these judges. You've got at least 3 Republican members of Congress who have filed articles of impeachment on the judge in Rhode Island that ruled against the Treasury data being handed over to the DOGE bros. So you've got Laura Loomer and Elon Musk. You got Laura Loomer posted personal info. They went after the judge's daughter again.
Right.
Standard playbook is what they did to Engeron and Mershon. They go after the family. So they dox them. They put all their employment information, where they work, where they live, on the internet. Elon Musk did that on this Rhode Island judge's daughter. He's been going after, he has this huge megaphone. He's got 200 million followers. So when he spends 3 days making 65 posts about one person, that person's life is going to be made hell, and he knows that very well. That's why he's doing it, because all of those people are going to besiege that person. They're going to be calling their office. They're going to be following him home, showing up outside their house. all that stuff. So that's the thing. They're not going to be able to impeach any judges, but they are going to put a lot of pressure on them. And of course, they're also going to start appealing all these things eventually to the Supreme Court, and that's Donald Trump's court.
But that's what they want, isn't it? They're almost pushing these things so that they'll get to the Supreme Court knowing that they have the protection of those MAGA judges. I have a clip of Chip Roy on Laura Ingram's show talking about this too, trying to push home the idea and taking a page out of Andrew Jackson's playbook. Let's take a look.
Just enacting your agenda and looking for waste is now something that requires a nationwide injunction to stop. Congress has got to step in on this nationwide injunction issue. I think that's like right up there with election integrity.
Well, let's keep in mind, I've got to be quick here. The president beat lawfare when it was going after him when he was a candidate. The president's going to beat this, in my opinion. Yes, I think he should take a page out of Andrew Jackson's playbook. At some point, J.D. Vance is right. When J.D. said, hold on, you can't have a judge step in when the president is exercising his constitutional authority. Imagine if a judge said, Mr. President, as commander-in-chief, you can't bomb this particular city or this certain area. You can't do that. You got to give the president the ability to be the chief executive. I hope he'll continue to do that. Congress, by the way, we need to make his executive orders permanent. We need to pass laws to back up his agenda. We need to move quickly to do that, and then we can stand behind the president. But the president's right to say he'll follow the law, but the Constitution matters too, and he can do his job.
Ingram says, bingo, because, of course, she has skin in the game, too. So the plan is, I presume, is to present Donald Trump as this chief law enforcement officer, that he is at the highest level. There is nobody above him. Even the judiciary does not have a say when Trump is around.
Yeah, well, that's what Vance argued. Well, first of all, Musk was the first one to argue it, and then Vance chimed in. Musk was the first one who said, what this judge is illegal. We should ignore this. We should not follow what this judge is telling us to do. And then Vance came in and said, yes, I agree with that. Judges should not have the ability to have any check on the executive branch, which is exactly wrong. I mean, this was decided in 1805 in Marbury versus Madison, where the Supreme Court said, we have judicial review. We have the ability to strike down laws or actions taken by either Congress or the executive if we find that what they're doing is illegal or conflicts with the Constitution. So they're taking issue essentially with that. But how they're characterizing this is that a judge, like a rogue judge, is grinding the executive branch to a halt and preventing the president from enacting his agenda. Well, that's not what's happening here. What's happening here is you have this crew, this rogue crew, DOGE, who Trump has empowered, accessing data and privacy things that they have no business accessing, and also canceling funding for programs that have been appropriated already by Congress, so which they're not allowed to do. So that's really the issue, is when you have an executive or people in the executive branch who have just completely gone rogue, does the judiciary have any role here to step in and say, this is not legal, you can't do that? Well, the day that we say no to that question is the day that we no longer have a constitutional republic. We just have an autocracy where they can just do whatever they want.
I would argue as an outsider that we're already there. I think a healthy dose of American exceptionalism prevents the Yanks from kind of buying into the fact that their government is an autocracy now, and that this dictatorship that we have warned of is fully underway. But what you're saying is whilst the courts stand, that we still are protecting the republic from this kind of last inch before tyranny.
Yeah, because I mean, the checks on presidential power are Congress, which, well, both chambers are in control of the Republicans.
Yeah.
But still, they could step up and say, no, we're not going to allow you to do this. But as we've seen, even just with the Trump's nominees, that many of these Republicans absolutely know are unfit, but will still vote for him because they're all afraid of Trump. So they are abdicating their responsibility to step up and say, no, you can't do this. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. USAID. I mean, they're all out this week saying how terrible USAID is. You can search their social media accounts. You can search the congressional record. Not only will you not find a single word that any of these Republicans have said negatively about USAID in their entire careers. I did these searches. I checked Tom Cotton, Lindsey Graham. I checked all these guys. Not one of them in their whole career has ever said a single word negative about USAID until this week. Now it's evil and must be disbanded by Elon Musk. So they are, and by the way, they voted for USAID funding in the past, and they promoted USAID and talked about how great it was in the past. All these guys. But now
it supports
Elon,
the farmers as well, doesn't it? It supports American
absolutely.
farmers. So
I mean, because all this food that we're sending all over the world through USAID
got to be
is
grown
being
somewhere.
purchased by American farmers in Republican states, which
Yeah.
is why some of them are speaking out. So you know, the point is that that's one check, and the only other check is the judiciary. So that's the only thing we have left. And they're obviously they are standing up so far. I mean, the at least the district court judges are. It hasn't and none of this has reached the appellate level yet. But the question is the Trump administration going to follow the orders of the court? That is really the last. If they cross that line and nothing is done about that, then we are in free fall.
Trump's lawyer, Alina Habba, went on TV and is basically trying to rewrite the structure of how the executive branch functions and who is responsible for who. You know, we talk about checks and balances all the time, but I think they rely on the fact that most of their supporters don't really know, so they can rewrite the narrative. Here she is.
Separation of powers. It's a really novel idea, but our founding fathers created a document, the Constitution. There's a separation of powers for a reason. The executive branch is the ultimate authority on federal issues, and we have rogue judges who are trying to stop members like DOGE team, Besant, from doing their job. And that's to protect taxpayer dollars, to look at what we're doing with spending, and to run the federal government under President Trump.
So here's
The executive branch is the ultimate authority, is what she said.
Yeah, it's basically like saying like the Kansas City Chiefs will decide if their penalty just occurred. Right. You know, they get the call, which, you know, many NFL fans have felt it's been that way for years. But the point is that, you know, the courts are the referees as far as like whether something is legal or not, whether anyone in government has exceeded their authority, whether it's the local post office or the president of the United States. It's always been since 1805 up to the courts to decide whether those rules have been broken. What Habba is saying is, no, that 220 years of American jurisprudence is gone. That now it's up to the president to decide if he has the authority to do something. I mean, he decides, oh, I think I have the authority to do this, so I'm going to do it, and the courts can't tell me any different. That's what she just said, which is, I mean, she is the senior legal counsel to the president of the United States, and that's her view. That's also Donald Trump's view of the presidency as well. But in his first term, he had a bunch of guys in the White House counsel's office and over at the Department of Justice who continued to tell him that he was wrong and that was not the case. The question is, does he have that now? No, I don't think he does have that now.
Well,
obviously, he's surrounded himself by lawyers who are telling him everything's good.
We've been saying for weeks now that the lack of adults in the room, or anybody that has an opposing view, or anybody who knows constitutional law, they're just not there to say to him, no, you can't do that, including saying things like, we're just going to take Gaza. I mean, so extreme. And under any normal circumstances, these things would never be uttered by a president or even a congressperson.
I mean, we could talk. I know, you know, we're probably going to talk about Gaza later, but just on the politics of it.
Yes.
There's like literally no Republican in Congress who agrees with that. I mean, there might be like 15, the hardcore, you know, Troy Nels or something, you know, the hardcore Trump cultists might agree with the United States occupying Gaza. But I'm telling you, 95% of the Republicans in the House and Senate absolutely do not agree with that plan. And neither does Trump's base. And not one of them, not one, will say anything.
But that's the litmus test, isn't it? That's the test
they
of
will
their
not
loyalty.
speak up. They will not speak out, even though they know it's insane. And what a lot of them have been pressed, in the hallways about this. And there's two answers you get. It's like, no, I don't agree with that, but we'll see how it plays out. Or, that's just Trump. He's just saying that for negotiating leverage. He doesn't really mean it. I don't know when these guys are going to learn.
I've been thinking about this a lot because I think that there are two levels of governance going on here. We've got Donald Trump, who's the front man, right? He's like the lead singer, but he doesn't write any of the songs.
Correct.
He just sings them.
Right.
So he's playing his games, things like renaming the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. That's a real Trump thing. It serves no purpose. It doesn't do anything other than just piss a bunch of people
plastic
off.
straws.
Or plastic straws, right? So that's where
That's all Trump.
That's all Trump, right? That's the kind of level that we're dealing with. And like making sure that he can show up at the Super Bowl and be photographed.
The Kennedy Center, that he's the chairman of the board now.
Right. So yes.
Those are things that matter to Trump. Correct.
Right. And so that's that lane. And we have to be very clear to define the difference between Trump's lane and then you've got the broligarchs lane, the tech oligarchs who have basically created this scheme. The Peter Thiels, Elon Musk. I didn't even realize that Elon Musk and Peter Thiel were in business together running PayPal 25 years ago.
Well, that's how Musk made his fortune.
Exactly. I mean, I've been looking at them as separate entities. I now realize that these are one of the same. Their views are very, very similar. And I've been watching videos of Peter Thiel interviews from 8 years ago, just listening to the way he talks. And it's basically laying the groundwork for what you and I are having to discuss now.
And J.D. Vance is part of that.
And J.D. Vance is part of that too.
Yeah.
So that's lane number two, where the real control, and let's not forget Peter Thiel was responsible for those choices, those three Supreme Court judges that Donald Trump crowbarred in during his last premiership. So there is huge sway there. He has huge amounts of power as a tech oligarch with this extreme far-right Christian nationalist view of the world. This separation of church and state has gone. They're going to go for the Department of Education, turn it into the Department of Indoctrination. There's so much more to come. And I've been rereading Project 2025 this week, and I've been checking off like all of the things that they've done so far. And I'm now looking down the list of contents to see what's coming next. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. We've been talking about this for years, and now it is playing out in real time. So do you think it's important that we understand the difference between Donald Trump, the lead singer who doesn't write the material, and then the puppet masters who actually have a long game here? And I will include even, the other Silicon Valley boys as well, who have fallen in line very quickly.
Bunch.
I mean, Google have changed the name to Gulf of America on Google Maps.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them. Yeah, I think it's important to have written, an enormous number of words so far about the Trump administration in like 3 weeks, like 5 million words, and 90% of them are about Elon Musk. I spend more time focused on Musk than I do on Trump, because Musk and Stephen Miller are really the ones running the country. Trump, like we just said, he's the king of England. He's the figurehead. He's not the PM. He's the king, right? Yeah. So he doesn't really have, he has the power, but he seems, at least for now, to be content with letting those guys do everything.
Well, because he doesn't have to do the work. I mean, he is
he likes
lazy,
that,
isn't he?
So the only time that's gonna change is I think one of two things. If he tires of Musk getting credit, getting attention, and that is going to, I think it already is, it's going to start getting to him eventually, and he's going to get more and more upset about that. or, you know, if they do things that embarrass him or piss off the base or make people upset, as they have done a few times where they've crossed a line and he's had to push them back in line, like on the H-1B visas and a few other things, where he's sort of embarrassed them. I mean, some of this stuff about, you know, the cutting off the funding, and then he's got his allies in the Senate who are from like Kansas, you know, and Missouri, who are calling him, going, my farmers in my state are screaming at me right now. What are you doing? And so he's had to reverse some of these things. So Musk and the tech bros, they are not thinking about the politics in Iowa or Kansas. And that's something that Trump does think about. So that's where the two, you know, the separation, definitely the Democrats' strategy has to be to separate these two entities from each other.
Right.
And I think that so far they understand that that's what has to be done. As far as how they're going about it, their technique is ham-fisted and clumsy and not that effective, I think, so far. I think the media is actually probably doing a better job than elected Democrats at trying to drive the wedge between them.
Well, in its simplest form, we just need the media to repeat the phrase President Musk, because that's what really is Trump's Achilles heel.
Yes.
And for him, as you say, he is a populist. He cares about the ratings, right? He's always looking at the ratings. Whereas for people like Musk and Thiel and Vance, they're so wealthy that to them, the ownership of the United States and changing the very fabric of this country is on a much higher level to where Trump is operating. You know, Trump's like a PR guy. But for them,
they don't really care about their public approval rate.
No. It's irrelevant to them because they're too rich. Yeah. It doesn't matter. That's, you know, it's like the wealthy people wearing the kind of cheap clothes. You know, they don't need to dress up.
But the reason why Musk's approval rating matters and it is going down, is because that is an anchor on Trump's leg.
Right.
And that the Musk approval rating is eventually going to drag the Trump approval rating down. And that's going to hurt Republicans in the midterm. So Musk approval rating continues to drop week after week after week. So yeah, those I still believe that a separation is possible and could happen. I still also believe it's not going to happen soon, but it could happen towards the end of the year. And you know, I think that there's a lot that Democrats can do to help make that happen.
I disagree with you a little. And I'll just state my claim here. I think that Trump works for Musk. I don't think it's the other way around. I don't think Trump brought Musk in to do that work. I think Musk brought Trump in to be the president. And I think that he wouldn't have got elected without Musk's investment and support and all of the, you know, we talked about all of the voter suppression and all that.
But in that equation, so let's say there is a dispute between them, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, he can't fire Musk because
Musk
is his
can't
boss.
fire him. So
True. So that's when we maybe see a JD Vance switch out or something, you know, something. Yeah. I'm sure there's a longer term plan because, as we know, Trump's brain is mush, as Ben describes it. And
well, I don't know, when you say he can't fire Musk, what do you mean? Like, what, he can't get him out of the government?
Well,
like what can Musk do?
Trump didn't want to go to prison, right? That was what was going to happen if he lost the election. So he absolutely had to win that election. And the fact that he won all the swing states and the popular vote, I mean, okay.
Well, I think Musk and RFK were key elements of
that. As we've discussed in previous episodes. Yeah. And so the balance of power now is such that Trump got what he wanted. He got to win the presidency and not go to prison and pardon all his buddies and 1,500 insurrectionists. So that's good for him. Now he's playing golf and he's delegating to people who are serious people. He's not having to do the work himself. He just hears the odd thing like $50 million worth of condoms and then repeats that, but he's not actually doing the work. Musk and his kids, you know, 4-year-old ex who we're about to look at, and his hackers aged between 19 and 26, they're hackers. I mean, that's what they are. They've literally hacked into the government systems in order to supposedly do their government efficiency work. But this is all designed so that Trump can lower the corporation tax rate and bring in less money from the wealthiest and then just go looking for savings elsewhere. I mean, so far we haven't even seen any real evidence of what they've found. So we're going to show this video now, which is really telling, isn't it? This kind of plays into my view that Trump is working for Musk and not the other way around. If you look at the power play, if you look at the dynamic, if you look at the way that, I mean, this has never happened before, has it? A man like Elon Musk not wearing a suit and tie, dressed like rough.
Which bothers Trump.
Which bothers Trump.
Trump does not like informal dress.
Right. And bring your kid to work day is like every day with Elon Musk. This kid is called X, for those that don't know.
Trump also doesn't like kids. So everything about this is annoying Trump.
Right. So Trump's face is fascinating, but also when this kid, I mean, there's a whole conversation to be had about why Elon brought his kid on his shoulders, using him as almost like a human shield. Some have described it. And Trump actually bats the kid away at one point, which is the most inhumane thing I've ever seen happen. But let's take a look at this clip and we'll talk about it in just a sec.
So people normally this quiet?
Your detractors, Mr. Musk.
I have to what?
Including a lot of Democrats.
I have detractors?
You do, sir.
I don't believe it.
Say that you're orchestrating a hostile takeover of government and doing it in a non-transparent way. What's your response to that criticism?
Well, first of all, you couldn't ask for a stronger mandate from the public. The public voted, we have a majority of the public voting for President Trump. We won the House, we won the Senate. The people voted for major government reform. There should be no doubt about that. That was on the campaign. The president spoke about that at every rally. The people voted for major government reform, and that's what people are going to get. They're going to get what they voted for. And a lot of times, people that don't get what they voted for, but in this presidency, they are going to get what they voted for. And that's what democracy is all about.
Yeah. The kid wasn't in that clip, so I apologize for that. But here's something very interesting. We now know that Trump does not have this mandate that Musk is describing there. He won by 1.46 percentage points. And there's 240 million eligible voters in the United States out of 330 million people. And how many votes he gets? 79 million or something? 78 million? So it's barely a mandate.
49.8% of the
Correct.
vote. Right.
Correct.
So wasn't this huge land. I mean, the only argument you can make is like it was an electoral college big win. Okay, well, whatever that's worth. That's hocus pocus.
Yeah.
But that's first of all, if you want to look at the substance of what they're claiming, that's not true. And did Trump ever bring up disbanding USAID or grabbing everyone's social security number, or even bringing in DOGE into the government? That was never part of the campaign. Donald Trump's campaign was about deporting migrants. So if Musk wants it to and ending trans athletes and women's sports and a couple of other things, that was it. It wasn't about any of the stuff that Musk is doing. Trump did not campaign on those things. I listened to every speech. I listened to every interview. And the stuff that Musk is doing right now that everyone's complaining about, Trump did not talk about any of it. So that's a lie, along with many other lies. But you can see Trump's face. He's aggravated. He is annoyed. He has that Musk is trying to be funny and Trump is not amused in any way. But Musk has to keep telling him how great he is and how everybody loves him, because that's the only thing that's basically like keeping Trump from really getting pissed off is that Musk constantly praises how great he is.
Yes. Because
Musk knows the psychology of Trump. That's how to play him. But even that gets worn out after a while. But yeah, let's talk about the human shield thing, because I think that's an interesting point. I've never brought that up on social media, because that's a very sensitive area to suggest that somebody is using, especially the owner of the platform of the social media.
Well, it's not the first time
they're
he's done
using
it,
their
though, Rob.
son. If I posted that, I would get like 9,000 angry replies from right wingers, okay, and probably get suspended, right? So it's different for me posting something like that than other people.
Yes.
Because they all follow me.
We can talk about it. We can flesh it out here.
Yeah,
in this
but
forum,
yeah,
you can't do in 140 characters.
Correct. But I do think that that's the case, because Musk talks constantly about assassinations and how afraid he is. And if you watch, his security detail is like beefier than Secret Service. They come out, they form a wall in front of him, and he comes out of buildings and he runs to his car. He was supposed to speak at a major economic forum in Miami last week in person. He did not go. And he said that the reason why he didn't go was security concerns, that he's been getting a lot of death threats. This is the reason why he's holed up in the White House and hasn't left there for weeks. And before that was holed up at Mar-a-Lago and wouldn't leave. He is afraid of being assassinated. He's talked about this hundreds of times. He will not appear in front of crowds right now in person unless it's like buku Secret Service there. So the fact that he is bringing his kid around, I absolutely do believe that that is one reason why he's doing it. There's two reasons. He wants to portray himself to his new MAGA fans as a family man and a father. And he knows that he has had nothing to do with his 11 kids their entire life. So it looks pretty bad for him to have 11 kids to his new Christian evangelical fans, and none of the kids are anywhere in his orbit, right? So now he drags this one kid around, and all MAGA talks about is what a great dad he is.
Yeah.
So it accomplishes two things. It accomplishes that, where he can sort of paper mache over the fact that he's a shitty dad and always has been. He's just a sperm donor. And also, I believe that he has it in his head that there are some assassins who will not take a shot at him if he's holding a kid.
Wow.
So there you go. That's what I believe.
The fact that we're even having to discuss this, that a guy who is an unelected individual, the richest man on the planet, is holding court in the Oval Office of the White House in the United States, being broadcast all over the world, silencing the president effectively. Trump really couldn't get a word in edgeways. And he was just sitting there twiddling his thumbs and waiting for it to be over so he could get the spotlight back again. And what you're saying is that, you know, he's brought his 4-year-old in to protect him from an assassination. I mean, how did we get here? I mean, I know how we got here.
Yeah, I mean, these are twisted people, and you know, I think you can clearly see he's on drugs. I mean, his face, his
he's
eyes.
Paranoid. That's the other thing, right? If you're
and
on
that
drugs,
makes you paranoid.
You're paranoid.
Yeah,
right.
Now, keep in mind, why did this happen? This happened because I don't think Trump ever had any intention of having Elon Musk do a press conference in the Oval Office, but reporters kept bringing it up every day. Yes. Like, when do we get to ask Musk questions? They kept bugging Trump. So the only reason why this even happened is because reporters kept bringing it up to him day after day. So I think he thought, okay, I'll just shut that up. I'll do this one time. And that way they won't be able to bug me anymore about Musk. So, but I think he thought, see, this is where the press was smart. And I have a lot of issues with the press that's covering him in the Oval Office. I think a lot of them are useless. Yeah. But one thing I like that they did is they asked Trump one question, and it was about Gaza. And then they immediately asked every other question of Musk. So I thought that was really great, because if they had gone back and forth and Trump got to talk a lot,
it would have been
I don't think this scene would have bothered him that much. Right. But since 90% of the questions went to Musk, that got under his skin. And we are not likely to see this again anytime soon.
Yeah, that's right. He's had his one chance. But, you know, I maintain that I don't think Trump can fire Musk, because the quid pro quo is significant. So I think that what will happen is that the pressure will become too much, as you say, and they'll just end up not talking to each other, a little bit like,
No, I could
Mitch
see that.
McConnell and Trump, right, where they just don't talk. I mean, Mitch said, I saw this on his 60 Minutes the other day, that he hasn't spoken to Trump since January 6th.
Yeah, a long time. Yeah. That's how Trump is. I mean, same thing with DeSantis, right? When they had their beef, they didn't speak for 2 years. So, and they live in the same state,
Right.
you know, so, you know, that's how Trump is. He's this passive aggressive kind of thing because you have to come to him. You know, that's his thing. That's his jam. If that you have to come to him hat in hand and kiss the ring. There's been very, very few exceptions to that. Putin is one example where he has been waiting for Putin to call him first for the last month. And Putin, he's not going to do that.
Well, Putin's playing him. I mean, that's what's so interesting, because Trump before the election was like, you know, I can end that war in 24 hours. I'm very good friends with Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
And Putin saw that and he's like,
he sat back. He played him.
Back.
And you know, because Putin's playing the long game, he knows that, you know, he doesn't have to do anything, that Trump is the one who's getting asked every day.
Yes.
When are you going to call Putin? When are you going to call Putin? You promised that you were going to get this done. And Trump does not want to be the first one to make the call. He wants Putin to call him, but Putin didn't do it. So, and then they would, you know, he would allude to the fact, he would hint that he was talking to Putin. He would say, oh yes, well, we were speaking, but then they would go to the Kremlin and the Kremlin would go, no, we haven't talked to Trump. So I think eventually Trump gave in and had to call him. But, you know, that's one of the only people that Trump would ever do that with. He would never do that with a senator or anybody like that. Yeah. So I agree with you. If they have a falling out, that's probably how it's going to play out. And I think that it's going to happen incrementally, where those kind of things are going to start. I think they may have already started to happen. And I think Musk apologizes and takes it back and says he's sorry and how great Trump is. But he's only going to be able to do that for so long before Trump's going to have enough.
Well, he admitted in the Oval Office that, you know, he will make mistakes and has, you know, sometimes makes mistakes, and we'll correct those mistakes. But the irony of the richest man in the world looking to save a few million here and a few million there is not lost on me, because people are losing their careers, their jobs, their livelihoods. Career people who are non-partisan, who have worked for the federal government for decades, who love their job, who are being bribed out of their job, forced out of their job, despite what these court orders are saying. And this is my fear, is that they're just carrying on regardless.
I want to talk about the Democrats' messaging with respect to Musk, because I said I'm not entirely thrilled with it. I like the fact that they're focusing on Musk, but I think they're going about it a little bit wrong. I think that what they need to do is this, because Musk's whole argument, and you hear this constantly, is why are Democrats so afraid of me finding waste? They're afraid that I'm going to find waste, fraud, and abuse in the system. And, you know, I think what Democrats need to counter with is say, look, no one is against that. If you can find a wasteful thing, something that's redundant, or we're spending money here that we shouldn't, or you know, bring that to us, we may agree with this. We may agree with you. Look, in a government that has a $7 trillion budget, there's always going to be wasteful spending in there somewhere that you can find. And we're all for, but that's also why we had inspector generals. That's what their job is to do. But you know, let's set that aside for a minute. Okay.
Just that small point.
That's not what we have a problem with you doing, Elon Musk. What we have a problem with you doing is shutting down, you know, accessing everyone's data, shutting down entire agencies, shutting down entire programs that have been created by Congress. So you're not doing what you're telling the public, that you're only identifying wasteful spending, but that's not what you're actually doing every single day. And I think that Democrats need to make that distinction.
Right. You know? We need to make it clear that DOGE is just a cover. They've given it a sexy name so that people think that it's a thing, but it's not. They've called it Department of Government Efficiency. It is not a department. It's not from within the government. This is a little subcontract sideline job that the richest man in the world has bribed his way into doing, he still, I mean, I look at the X account, the DOGE account on X, where he is supposedly posting all of the waste. But if you look at it, there's clearly a perfect explanation for everything.
Well, and also many of those things are well known. I mean, like he
Right.
brought up one the other day that I've read stories about it like a decade ago.
Yeah.
The underground processing place for Social Security. I
Yes.
mean, I've seen, he claimed that he just discovered that and unveiled it. It's like there's been media stories about that for a decade. So a lot of these things that he's quote unquote discovering, people already know about it. And these things were debated in Congress and they were voted on and approved,
Right.
and signed into law. Some of them by Donald Trump. And so some of these things he's complaining about were put in during Trump's presidency.
The government is not a business. They don't operate in the
Correct.
same way. And no one is really coming forward and explaining that having a business guy or a tech guy come in and basically smash it and crash it, because that was always the plan. It was the deconstruction of the administrative state. It's in the Project 2025 document. Steve Bannon was talking about it a decade ago. This whole thing has been planned. This is not a random thing. And we've been led to believe that, Musk's showing up and he's using his Tesla skills.
Yeah.
But, this is the mandate for leadership. This is in the book. This does not come from Musk. This comes from that group that we talked about earlier. So we really need to remind people, because this is all about reducing corporation tax so the richest can pay less. He already reduced it from 23% to 15%. Is that the right number? And he wants to lower it down to, 12% or less.
Yep. Cut corporate taxes, all
corporate
kinds of
taxes.
stuff. Yeah.
So the point is that they are never going to find, through DOGE or any other body to try and look for waste.
Not even close.
They will never find even a fraction of the amount of money that is being lost by Trump's tax cuts for the rich.
Not even close. It won't even be 10%. I mean, that there's no question about that.
No.
Everything he finds is going to add up to like less than 1% of the budget.
Yeah.
Whatever he finds,
Yeah. And less than 1% of the budget is also exactly what USAID was spending. 0.63% of the federal budget went on feeding the poorest people in the world, and the richest person in the world has taken that food away.
Yeah. And it's same thing with Ukraine. I mean, that money is being spent in the United States to buy things to send overseas, whether it's pharmaceuticals, medicine, food, clothing. It's all money that's being spent domestically in the United States.
Because we send them our old shitty weapons. We don't make fresh weapons and send them to Ukraine. We send them our old stock, and we replenish our stock.
And as we've seen, now that they stopped funding, there's a lot of American companies screaming because they're the ones who are selling all the stuff to USAID. So I mean, it's
and then they're going to get hit with the tariffs as well in a few months' time. Listen, we have to take a quick break, but I want to come back and talk about Ukraine, because there's some big news, not just from Trump, but this morning from Pete Hegseth, which will frighten us all. We'll do that next here on Uncovered. Let's be real. 2025's been all about change, whether it's work, personal stuff, or just the daily grind. It can be hard to keep up. Well, here's the deal. When things get hectic, we don't have to go through it alone. Embrace the power of nature and elevate your everyday with Via. Trusted by over 500,000 happy customers, Via is the Swiss Army knife of wellness, dedicated to harnessing the natural benefits of hemp to create high-quality wellness products. Whether you're looking to improve your sleep, focus, recovery, add a little pep to your step, or just get high, Via has something for you. With products ranging from 0 to 100 milligrams of THC, Via gives you the power to blaze your own trail. Via is well-renowned for their award-winning THC and THC-free gummies and vapes, THCA flower, soothing topicals, and calming drops, all crafted with the highest quality hemp sourced from trusted, independently owned American farms. And the best part, Via legally ships to nearly all states in the US in discreet packaging directly to your door with a worry-free guarantee, no medical card required. So, if you're 21 plus, Check out our link to Via's website in our description below and use code UNCOVERED for 15% off. And if you're new to Via, get a free gift of your choice. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Enhance your everyday with Via. Don't you wish you had a secret weapon? Something that always impresses, a recipe maybe, or even a piece of clothing? Well, a secret weapon is a great asset to have in your back pocket. It helps you get ahead in life, and that is how Mack Weldon thinks about clothing. As a secret weapon. Timeless, classic style that's infused with performance fabrics and hidden details. I love my Ace full-zip hooded sweatshirt in a charcoal heather grey. It keeps me warm, makes me feel more confident, because it's quality clothing. Mack Weldon apparel gives you understated good looks for understated confidence. Not flashy, just classic, always in style, and made from the world's most comfortable performance materials. Mack Weldon clothes are designed to fit your style and the demands of modern life. They look like regular clothes, but they feel like the latest in modern comfort. Get timeless looks with modern comfort from Mack Weldon. Go to mackweldon.com and get 25% off your first order of $125 or more with promo code UNCOVERED. That's MACKWELDON.com. Promo code UNCOVERED. And you can find links to our sponsors in the description below. Ron, Ukraine, as we said earlier, Trump promised that he could end it even before he became president. You know, after he'd won the election and before the inauguration originally. Then it got pushed to after the inauguration. Here we are almost 4 weeks into Trump's leadership and still nothing on Ukraine. We have a couple of clips. I want to start with the one from him. He's been doubling down on this, and the language that he's using is pretty much the language of Vladimir Putin, as I understand it. Let's take a look.
I want to have our money secured because we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars. And, you know, they may make a deal, they may not make a deal, they may be Russian someday, or they may not be Russian someday, but we're going to have all this money in there. And I say, I want it back. And I told them that I want the equivalent, like $500 billion worth of rare earth. And they've essentially agreed to do that. So at least we don't feel stupid. Otherwise, we're stupid. I said to them, we have to get something. We can't continue to pay this money. You know,
they may be Russians someday. What's he talking about?
Yeah, every indication is bad right now on this. You know, I paid a lot of attention to what he said again today, what Hegseth said today, and what he's done. And it's all bad. It's all bad for Ukraine. And I think Ukraine is now probably today for the first time realizing that as much as they hoped that maybe he would be an honest broker here and play, you know, want to get this resolved for his own legacy, for his own selfish reasons, that's not going to happen. He is going to sell them out. And what the one way we know this is, well, first of all, let's take that right there. So nowhere in there did he ever talk about the fact that that was the right thing to do, or it was a good thing to do, or that this benefited the United States and our allies. No, it's all just like they're, in his mind, they're ripping us off, they're robbing us, and we want their stuff. So how does Ukraine rebuild their country after the war? With their natural resources and with their economy. So what he's saying is essentially what we did to Germany after World War I in the Treaty of Iraq,
for that matter.
We're going to cripple your economy, your ability to rebuild after the war, which is going to cause, which led directly to World War II. So that's going to cause more problems. So what he's saying is, and then here's the other thing: what rare? Who's getting this stuff? What is, like, the United States government? It's being handed over to the government, and what is the government going to do with it? This stuff has to be given to private businesses, corporate. What are we going to sell it? Who are we going to sell it to? How is this going to work? I mean, this is nuts. We're essentially treating treating this like a business transaction. It's the same thing with him trying to develop Gaza.
Yeah,
put
but
real
it's all he
estate. It's the
knows.
same thing.
He's just a realtor. He's just a
It's
failed
nonsense.
realtor at the end of the day.
It's totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
But then you look at it like, what bargaining chips do we have with Putin to end this conflict favorably? Well, you know, we have Ukraine becoming part of NATO. We have Ukraine getting some of their territory back. We have the sanctions. We have the unit that goes after the Russian oligarchs' assets around the world. All of those things have already been given up. He said before negotiations even began that Ukraine will not become part of NATO. Ukraine is going to have to give up territory, and he's already dissolved the agency that seizes Russian assets around the world. He's disbanded that already. So what do we have left to negotiate with? You know, some sanctions.
But
That's
there's never
it.
going to be any negotiation. I mean, you know, if you go back to the Mueller report laid it out that Trump was compromised by Russia, and the only reason he couldn't be prosecuted was because he was the president of the United States. So we've known this for a long time. And I think that people have fallen foul of Trump's propaganda, Russia, 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 and, you know, they're this and they're that, and, you know, I rule Putin. The reality is completely different. You know, Putin helped Trump get elected in 2016 in the same way that, you know, we've talked about his relationship with Musk now. So really, Putin and Musk, they both have a hold over Donald Trump. They've both helped him get elected, and they need something in return. And ultimately, Trump, if any other president was president, then obviously you support and fight for a sovereign nation to protect their own country and their borders and their people. But Trump has no respect for anybody who doesn't look or sound like him. So,
Yeah, I mean, Trump, I'd actually rather have President Xi negotiate this than the United States at this point, because we're not neutral. We're not honest brokers.
no.
And we're not, and I say that not because we're on the side of Ukraine, because we're not. I think here's what's going to happen. Ukraine is going to have to make a decision here. They're going to have to decide, because Trump is going to sell them out. And I think that reality is now, I think they were afraid of that before. Now they know it. And so how are they going to react? There's either one or two ways this is going to go. They're just going to give in and cave and give Russia and Trump what they want and not be a shell of what they were prior to this invasion and invite a future invasion, or they're going to walk and they're going to say, okay, we understand we've got to do this without the United States. And the only way is if Europe steps up in a major way more than now, and they've already done a lot, but they're going to have to step into that breach and say, we have your back. If you walk away from these negotiations because the U.S. is not being fair, you're also going to walk away from U.S. aid. We will fill that void. I very much could see this playing out that way, because I don't think the Ukrainian people are going to stand for their president going along with the demands that Trump is talking about.
But
I don't.
What you're describing, Ron, is the makings of a third world war.
Sure.
Nobody wants to really say it, but it appears to me that the United States with Trump and the isolationists and repositioning, Trump is no fan of Europe. He's about to put tariffs onto European trade as well, created huge divide there. I just do not see this kind of allied force that we saw in the last World War. The territory now is divided in completely different ways. And I have no doubt that Trump will pull the U.S. out of NATO.
And here's the point. We have all the leverage right now, but we're not using any of it. Russia's economy is in shambles.
Yeah.
They've lost 300,000 soldiers. They have changed they're bringing convicts. They're bringing in North Koreans.
Correct.
The North Koreans have pulled off the line because they've been decimated, the North Korean troops that they've had to bring in to shore them up. Price of coal, which is a huge percentage of their economy is coal exports, are at their lowest level in decades. Their stock market, their currency is in the toilet. They are in a tremendously weak position, But Donald Trump doesn't ever say anything, doesn't believe that, doesn't think that, or doesn't say it. So we're acting like we're in the position of weakness when it is in fact Putin. And Putin is acting like he is bargaining in a position of strength when he knows he's not. So it's absolute insanity that Donald Trump is conducting these negotiations, going into it this way.
Well, he's delegated the negotiations, remember. He's sent others to go do it for him, and we heard that. I'm going to play the Hegseth clip. This is where this morning he basically announces that America does not
This guy should be nowhere near the negotiations.
Nowhere near the negotiations. But he basically announces that the U.S. does not see a place for Ukraine as a sovereign nation without giving up some of its territory to Russia. And if you listen to this little prepared speech that he's got, to me it sounds like it's been translated from Russian into English. Here it is.
We want, like you, a sovereign and prosperous Ukraine. But we must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective. The United States does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement. Instead, any security guarantee must be backed by capable European and non-European troops.
So to me, it's the same with Hegseth as it is with Trump. Two lanes. There's the stuff that Hegseth wants to do, renaming these barracks to give them their Confederacy names.
He's a
back
lightweight.
Again. He's a lightweight, and getting trans people out of the military and probably women eventually. And then there's the other lane, which is the diktat from upon high, which is stuff like you're going to have to deliver the bad news that the U.S. is basically not on the same side as Ukraine anymore.
Even if you believed, this is where the stupidity comes in. Even if you believe that those things are true, you don't say them before you enter the negotiations. These are the bargaining chips these are the things that Russia wants.
Yeah.
Russia wants Ukraine banned from entering NATO forever, and that to be guaranteed. Russia wants the current borders to be frozen in place. So what you're saying is that we're already announcing ahead of time, we're giving Russia everything we want. So now Putin is going to say, okay, thank you very much. Now I want something else. You're giving away all your leverage.
Why do you think Putin is not directing this whole mission anyway? Because I'm very much of the opinion that since Trump got the presidency, he basically now is having to do whatever Putin wants because of the back channels, whether it be through Elon Musk or anybody else. And that this is not about the United States at all. We are basically the agents for Russia. And if you were to listen to what Hegseth said just then, it is literally every request from the Russian president. He hasn't changed his story for the last 10 years, Vladimir Putin. This is what he wants. Remember, he started this war by sending in these, unofficial Russian fighters. And everyone seems to have kind of forgotten that Ukraine did not start this. Ukraine did not ask for this. And yet here we are, basically offering a press release that could have been written by Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, Trump has never said that Putin is the aggressor. Putin started this war.
Never said a bad word about Putin.
No, all he does is say, we have to stop the killing. Both sides have some responsibility, blah, blah, blah. It never would have happened if I was president. He never, ever says Vladimir Putin was wrong. He never should have invaded. So, yeah, it's just, I really don't think that the United States being involved in these negotiations is going to get it done. I really don't. Unless the Ukraine is basically willing to surrender, and I don't get any sense that that's what they are interested in doing. And I also get the sense that Europe is ready to step up and fill our shoes.
But that's when things become dangerous. That's my fear, is that the moment that the rest of Europe and NATO forces are brought in to try and manage this situation because America has dropped the ball, that's when you're looking at
It
a
becomes
conflict
much more dangerous
on an
Absolutely.
international scale.
Because I think that Putin then would get more aggressive.
Of course,
with
because he's
European
nuts,
countries,
right?
Yeah,
I mean, I think there are
it's
two
a mess.
options.
It's a mess. You know, I think that Ukraine is going to walk away from these negotiations. Trump will then use that as justification to
Right.
cut off aid.
He'll
Hey,
say they
I
didn't wanna make a
tried,
deal. Yeah,
and you know, Putin wants peace. We want peace, but Zelensky doesn't.
correct.
And blame everything on him. I think that that's what's happening here. But we'll see.
And so the two options, as I see it, is you're either going to see a kind of made for TV surrender, where Ukrainian troops are kind of marched with their hands on their heads, off to the Russian front line, or you're going to have Trump make an announcement that he has done a deal, but the deal is that they're going to segregate the Donbass or some territory that Putin has always wanted, and that is now going to be designated as part of the Russian state.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I mean, it's not. I'm not feeling good about it.
No,
that's for sure.
I
mean, I think that he wants to take credit for ending the war, and if he would just
will be the
approach
wrong
it
ending
in an intelligent way, and that I think he could accomplish that, and he could get the credit. Because I think that Putin is looking for a way out of this. That's what nobody talks about. It is that Putin desperately wants this war to end because he's getting his ass kicked. He promised his own people it would be over in 3 days. He'd be in Kyiv in 3 days, and Zelensky would be in a Russian prison or in exile. And here we are 3 years later. So this is what no one in the Trump administration is making the case that Putin needs this war to end every bit as much as Ukraine does.
Yeah.
Or more.
It's very sad. I really hope Vladimir Zelensky survives this, because he really has shown some incredible stoicism and great strength as a leader, considering that he was an actor and a comedian.
One other thing we haven't talked about with Zelensky is, Trump and Putin has mentioned that they want elections to be held in Ukraine prior to any peace deal.
Okay. So
which is that's another thing. If Trump demands that, then he's just completely in the tank for Russia.
Right. Yeah. Because Zelensky's opposition is kind of Russia.
You don't hold elections when somebody's invading your country.
No.
Nobody does that.
I want to show this clip of Pete Hegseth doing the stuff in the other lane, which is the stuff that he wants, and bragging about Fort Bragg, if you pardon the pun, and let's take a look.
It's about that legacy. It's about the connection to the community, to those who've served, and we're not, as the president has said, and I've said as well, we're not done there. There are other bases that have been renamed that erodes that very same legacy. There's a reason I said Bragg and Benning when I walked into the Pentagon on day one, but it's not just Bragg and Benning. There are a lot of other service members that have connections, and we're going to do our best to restore it. It's an honor to do so. Thank you all for your time. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, this is the stuff that he knows how to talk about. He's a bit out of his depth when it comes to talking about the sovereignty of Ukraine.
He gave a speech, his first speech, to all the senior generals and admirals. He was in front of 200 of them, his third day after he got confirmed. And he's talking about this Fox News garbage, the DEI and the trans and the renaming the bases. And, I was watching the faces of these people, in the video feed, and the generals are just looking at him like,
yeah,
Jesus Christ. There is a hell of a lot more to this job than these Fox News talking points. After you're done with banning trans, after you're done renaming your bases after the Confederate generals again, then what are you going to do? Because that gives you about 2 weeks on the job, because it's still an agency with 2 million employees to run.
But
a vast agency.
This is the thing. It requires a quota, a number of people that are serving in the military. If he gets rid of all of the people that don't fit the description, whether they be trans or the wrong color or the wrong gender, they're not going to have enough people to serve in the U.S. military. I mean, this really is a self-defeating event. And my fear is, because again, I've been reading Project 2025, and it talks about conscription, the idea that, we're actually going to reach out to Americans, federal workers potentially, and go send them to fight wars on our behalf. I mean, if you look further down the road, this has a very messy outcome, and one that I'm not even thrilled to talk about particularly, because it sounds like conspiracy, but it's all in black and white.
There are far more people of color and women serving in the military today than there ever has been before.
Yeah.
Certainly way more than when I served in the 80s. So, yes, if you're going to be hostile to them and to say, because what he's saying is to all of them is he's saying, whatever rank you've achieved, whatever awards you've been given, they're all because of DEI.
Yeah.
You didn't earn it.
Yeah.
That's what he's saying to all of them. And so, yes, I think it's going to be very difficult for him to retain these people. And they think that they probably want many of them to leave because they think that they're going to be able to recruit a bunch of white people to go into the military. But and that's kind of how they want to get it back to the way it was in like the 70s and 80s. But the world has changed, and I think they're in for a rude awakening when it comes to all that. So it just this culture war nonsense, it plays on Fox News, but it doesn't play in like the real world,
in real life.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, in order to get, because white males are not signing up for the military, so in order to recruit people, they would have to lower the standards.
Yeah, but they think because of Trump that all the white men are going to come back and start signing up, again.
Well,
so
good luck with that.
Recruiting became a lot harder after Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah.
It became harder to get people. That's the bottom line, because service was much more stressful and difficult with a lot more overseas deployments and time away from your family.
And risk.
And risk. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. Because we were seeing Arlington National Cemetery on the TV all the time during those conflicts.
Sure.
And that is not a great commercial for recruitment, I'm sure.
No, certainly not. I mean, I've asked myself this question all the time, which is, when I went in, obviously there were no wars, mid-'80s. Would I have gone in, if I had graduated high school while Iraq and Afghanistan was going on? I don't know. Maybe I would have, but it's a hard question to answer because it's a whole different ball game,
Well, this is a random question, but people have been writing to me about this because people are desperate right now. They're seeing a kind of power vacuum in the Democrat leadership. And they're saying, what could the military do? Is there the chance of a military uprising? The idea that the military will recognize that the status quo is being so disrupted by this insane governance. Is that even on your radar, or is that something for
the only thing is if they're asked to
fantasy?
do something that, that many of them know is not legal, whether it has to do with migrants, because that really could be where the rubber meets the road with the military.
Yeah.
I think it could be where if they're being asked to go into American cities and to round up migrants and stuff, which could happen because the ICE numbers the deportation numbers are not what they hoped for.
No, well, they were hoping for this amazing visual, weren't they?
Furious.
Yeah.
And Homan is furious and
Yes.
blaming a lot of different factors on that. But the bottom line is it's hard to find people and round them up and deport them. It's not as easy as it sounds. And so if they try to have the military do that if they feel like we don't have sufficient assets, what they're trying to do right now is get local law enforcement to help them. And some local law enforcement is helping them, but others are not. And so if they decide, well, we need to go have the military do this, then I could see serious problems because the military is not supposed to get involved in domestic law enforcement.
There was a story out of California that said that there was intimidation of students in schools, in elementary schools, from ICE agents that turned out to not be ICE agents, but people impersonating them.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, that's what it's come
Well,
to
the
now.
big thing that's brewing right now is that Homan and Kristi Noem
Yeah.
are accusing FBI agents or other federal agents of tipping off media about ICE raids. So because they've conducted 2 huge ICE raids involving hundreds of agents, and they both came up virtually empty. Where they got like one raid got like 2 people, the other raid got like one migrant. And they're fanning out into big areas.
Yeah.
And they're not getting the numbers. So and they predict like, hey, we're going to get like 100 gang members, and they get 1. So Homan has to have an excuse because Trump is fuming about this. And the excuse that they're giving, what they're accusing, they're saying that there are rogue federal agents inside ICE or inside the FBI who is tipping off local media, and they are tipping off non-governmental organizations who work with migrants, and people are fleeing before the raids are happening. And they are threatening to track down and find those people and prosecute them and put them in jail. I'm talking about FBI agents. So I don't know whether that's true or not, but that's the excuse that they're giving, which also shows how chaotic this whole thing is.
But that is the fact that this is coming out of the mouths of government officials is really just doubling down on their cruelty, because, you know, this is so cruel. This whole immigration raid stuff is so cruel and so unnecessary, and yet they relish it. And you know, from looking at the kind of right-wing social media, that people love the idea of migrants being hunted down and grabbed and thrown on planes and deported. Let's take a look at Tom Homan making this announcement.
What is our Tom Homan? Tom, where are these leaks coming from?
Well, look, we think it's coming from inside, and we know the first leak of Aurora is under current investigation. We think we identified that person under investigation right now. The California leak, Secretary Noem, you know, she's correct. Some of the information we're receiving tends to lead toward the FBI. But I talked to the Deputy Attorney General all this weekend. They've opened up a criminal investigation. And they have promised that not only this person lose their job and lose their pension, they're going to go to jail. They're going to criminally prosecute. So we're all over it.
He's something straight out of the Addams Family, isn't he, that guy?
He's blaming like FBI agents for tipping off migrants. Yeah. Here's the real reason why the numbers are down. I could just tell you the real reason is politics. Because what did you just hear him talk about? Where have they done their big raids, right? New York City, Colorado, Chicago, and LA. What do those 4 places have in common? They're all Democratic areas, right? Where are most of the migrants? Most of the migrants are in Florida. They're in Texas. They're in Georgia. They are actually in Republican states.
Yeah.
So for political reasons, they have chosen to make a point by going to Democratic areas to look for migrants first. And there aren't nearly as many migrants in those places as there are in Republican areas. So my question is, you know, I think Florida has the most or the second most number of migrants. They haven't done any raids in Florida. Like, when are we going to get to the red states where all the migrants really are? If you're truly serious about this, why aren't you raiding farms in Florida?
Yeah, well, that would be self-defeating.
Or construction sites in Florida.
Yeah.
Because I can take you to any construction site in Florida.
Right.
And there's a lot of brown people working there. But those are owned by Republican donors, those companies. So it seems like they're trying to prove a point by going into areas that are controlled by Democrats. And because they want that show. They want to show these migrants are here and being protected by Democrats.
Yeah.
If they were really serious about getting these numbers up, and eventually they're going to have to do this because they are really serious, they're going to have to start going into Texas and Florida and Georgia
Yeah.
and, North Carolina.
Or shooting people at the border, which is something that Trump wanted to do last time around, shooting people in the legs so that it looks good on TV. This is what's so frustrating for me, is that so much of their policies, whether it be the Department of Government Efficiency or these immigration raids, it's all fake. And it's designed to build the base and to make people have a false sense of security that they voted for the right guy, when in fact it's all a distraction. And even Trump saying, we're going to take Gaza and we're going to own Gaza and we're going to build houses on Gaza, that is also a distraction, a diversion tactic. Because in the meantime, the American government is being deconstructed by Musk and his hackers and everything else that's going on that they don't want us to see. Maybe we should talk about Gaza right now. Let's play a clip of His Royal Highness.
The U.S. would buy Gaza, and today you just said we're not going to buy Gaza.
We're not going to have to buy. We're going to have Gaza. We don't have to buy. There's nothing to buy. We will have Gaza.
What does that mean?
No reason to buy. There is nothing to buy. It's Gaza. It's a war-torn area. We're going to take it. We're going to hold it. We're going to cherish it.
Well, firstly, that's the King of Jordan, by the way, sitting there, who was completely appalled and did not know how to handle that. So he just kept quiet for now. He's probably gone back and he's like, what is happening? Trump, of course, said that Egypt and Jordan would basically take all of the Palestinian refugees. But you would have thought that a developer, somebody who works with land and buildings in Donald Trump, would understand that there might not be any buildings still standing, but the land is the land is the land, is the home of the Palestinians. Completely leaves that section out.
Well, and he also leaves out, like, what is their when he's asked, well, what if they refuse to leave? Or he says, no, they'll be happy. We'll take care. It's like, this is someone who's obviously never opened a history book, or who knows nothing about the region. To say the United States is going to move them out of this area into another country. First of all, there's no other country that is going to take these people. They do not want. Egypt doesn't want them. Jordan doesn't want. Jordan, the King of Jordan, said, "I'll take 2,000 children, orphans." Okay, well,
Jordan's already taken 2.5 million
that's
Palestinian
nothing.
refugees.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean that's so the idea that, they'll just be happy, they'll just be willing to go and leave their homeland, right? They'll just leave. You are inviting a massive amount of terrorist attacks on the United States. There's no American that would be safe anywhere in the world, including here, if we do this. This is going to be Osama bin Laden on steroids. This is going to create a tremendous number of hostile terrorist organizations and groups that are going to come out. We're going to be the number one enemy, not Israel.
But he's ignoring the whole point of the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians in the first place.
Right.
That's what he's ignoring. He's like,
Yeah,
well, of course they'll go
he
somewhere else. They
doesn't
happy
care.
to go. Yeah, he thinks that by building these kind of awful tenement buildings that he's famous for, that they're going to flock to them because they're going to be like, oh, well,
no, he's not letting them in there. Oh, you're talking about somewhere else.
Somewhere else. Yeah, he's talking
that's
about
right.
Building,
He thinks
building
that they're all
some
going to go there.
kind of
right.
shitty dormitories somewhere for them because he thinks of Arabs as rats. Let's be
That's
clear.
right, yeah.
That's
They'll be
the
happy.
way he sees it.
Yeah.
He uses
And they won't be
words.
happy.
Yeah.
They're going to be furious.
Yeah.
So again, like, is he serious? Well, here's what this is the conundrum here. And I heard what you said about distraction, and I've heard Hakeem Jeffries mention that word before, and many other Democrats. It's like there are two schools of thought here. One school is like, this and other things are just being done to divert our attention away from other things. But the other school of thought is like, no, he actually intends to do all of this shit. And he's not bluffing. And you could say, okay, well, that's a distraction. Well, if we say, well, I'm going to ignore those 7 or 8 things because they're a distraction from this other thing, then you've just allowed him to get away with 7 or 8 outrageous things. we are just in a position right now, I think, where even though it's really, really hard to fight this guy on like 29 different fronts, and we really might only want to focus on the 2 or 3 things that we think matters most, you have to fight everywhere.
I agree with you.
So I'm with the Chris Murphy school of thought who has said that, and I am not with the Hakeem Jeffries approach of we need to pick our battles and stuff. No, I think we got to fight them like Churchill said, in the streets, on the beaches, everywhere with sticks and pitchforks, you know, if we have to.
It's interesting you mentioned Hakeem Jeffries because he's come up for quite a lot of criticism recently, along with Chuck Schumer. It's just been so business as usual with these guys. And, you know, and I have great respect for Hakeem. I think he's great. But is he the leading man?
I think that Hakeem is very good at parliamentarian strategy.
He's a strategist, right?
Inside the House.
So who do we need up front?
He is not a national spokesperson.
No.
He is not the person to take on Donald Trump. He's very good to take on Mike Johnson. I absolutely trust Hakeem Jeffries to handle Mike Johnson the right way, with some, you know, guidance from other people that have, like Pelosi, that have been around a long time. So I think he's limited as to what he is there for.
He doesn't have the speed or the
He's
agility.
not a party leader or anything like that. He's a leader of the House.
Yeah.
Schumer is useless, completely useless.
He
needs to retire.
We will win.
And the sooner that Dan Goldman is in Chuck Schumer's seat in the Senate, the better it is for the party. And I wish that would happen tomorrow, because Dan Goldman is great, and he's the guy who needs to be in that seat, not Chuck Schumer.
I have 2 words for you: Crockett and Jasmine. You can choose which order they go in.
And AOC is good too.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, we are seeing from these people who in previous generations were ridiculed. Of course, AOC was thrown into the squad and she was underestimated. It's people like her and Jasmine Crockett, who is, I mean, she's a former public defender. Absolutely brilliant. Does not waste a second of time. She can say in a minute what it takes Hakeem Jeffries 5 minutes to say.
We have so much talent. The problem is they're not in charge.
No.
That's the problem. And so we got to push these dinosaurs out. You know, they got to go hopefully on their own at some point. But, you know, we're already talking about, you know, Nancy's talking about running for re-election.
Yeah.
Chuck just ran for re-election.
Yeah,
even Bernie Sanders is talking about running for re-election. He's like 85 years old. So it doesn't appear that Jerry Nadler just ran for re-election. It doesn't appear that any of these people want to leave anytime soon.
Yeah. And the thing is, we have to respect their service. It's not that you are doing them a disservice. They served, in Nancy Pelosi's case, for 100 years.
Yes, very good and very admirably. But there is a time to
pass the baton at some point, and there are so many deserving individuals that have it. And you know, I would love to watch Crockett wiping the floor with some of these these kind of old white men who she would debate. I relish any time that she shows up. Maybe we should just talk quickly about the media. I want to talk about Gaza in a sec, but the media, because the new press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, has been defending the White House's right to deny entry to any reporters. They've been taking away these press passes. The Associated Press, which is one of the oldest kind of institutional news gathering services, will no longer be covering the White House. I mean, this is the mark of an authoritarian. Let's take a look.
The reason that the AP was barred, which they said was because they're not using the phrase Gulf of America, they're using Gulf of Mexico in line with their standards. And so the question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will retaliate against reporters who don't use the language that you guys believe reporters should use? And how does that align with the First Amendment commitment that you were just talking about?
I was very upfront in my briefing on day one that if we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, we are going to hold those lies accountable. And it is a fact that the body of water off the coast of Louisiana is called the Gulf of America. And I'm not sure why news outlets don't want to call it that, but that is what it is. The Secretary of Interior has made that the official designation in the geographical identification name server. And Apple has recognized that. Google has recognized that. Pretty much every other outlet in this room has recognized that body of water as the Gulf of America. And it's very important to this administration that we get that right, not just for people here at home, but also for the rest of the world.
Because it's racist. That's why. It's racist. I mean, it's not really more complicated than that. You're doing it because you're trying to overshadow Mexico and their rights because you think the white man reigns supreme.
Yeah, there's only one way to win this, and this little spat right here, and they did it again today. They would not allow the AP reporter to attend Tulsi Gabbard's swearing in today. So here's the thing: you have to understand what motivates people, what incentivizes people, and how to hurt people in any negotiation like this. So they're playing hardball with the media. They're saying that if you don't, and they've done this at the Pentagon where they pushed out like Wall Street Journal and New York Times and stuff out of the Pentagon and put right-wing outlets in there, and they say they're going to rotate them in and out. They took away seats from like the New York Times and gave it to right-wing media outlets that don't even have a Pentagon correspondent. Yeah. So the seats are just empty. So what do? So there's only one way to do it, and that's because you have to understand, what do they want? They want coverage. They want these things covered. They want reporters in the Oval Office. They want reporters at Tulsi Gabbard's swearing in. They desperately want the coverage. So if all the other press just sits back and lets them cherry pick and go after this one or that one or that one, everybody loses. It's united we stand, divided we fall. This is only going to stop when if they had that Tulsi Gabbard swearing in, you have all the press shows up, and they say to the AP person, you can't come in because your publication uses Gulf of Mexico. If every reporter walked out and said, okay, we're not covering this, we're not going to put it on our news channels, we're not going to write about it, and we're walking out of this room right now, they will back down.
Yeah.
But the problem is that there's no unity and there's no sense of
rivals.
Team among the press.
They're disorganized.
And they're going to have to figure out how to become a team and work together with dealing with the Trump administration. Even though they're competitors with each other, the only way to deal with this is if they all get up and walk out the door, if one of them gets singled out.
Keep dreaming, Ron.
That may never happen, but I'm going to keep shaming them. I tweeted today. I tweeted today, every reporter who walked into that room and covered Tulsi Gabbard swearing in should be ashamed and embarrassed. And I'm going to keep shaming them. Yeah. If they don't stand up for each other, then how are they going to stand up for us?
Well, you can tell by some of their dumb questions that they're not really up to the job anyway, let alone organizing. I just can't imagine it. But the way it's going to go is eventually all of the legitimate media will be sent away, and you will only have Breitbart,
or they'll just cave, or they'll just do what Trump wants them to do.
I mean, look, we've had to see that from PBS, for example, and from NPR taking any references to diversity, equity, and inclusion off of their websites and not covering it. Because they're publicly funded.
They want to keep their funding.
They want to keep their funding.
But they're going to lose it anyway. This is the point. You got to fight.
Got to go down with a fight.
Appease, But I agree with you. It doesn't seem like there's any sense of unity between members of the press and press agencies. Like, you don't have Washington Post calling the New York Times, calling AP, and them all getting together and getting on the same page. That just doesn't happen. But they're going to have to. They're going to have to, or else they're going to lose.
We've only got a minute or so left, so let's finish with the budget, because it's actually a huge story that we were going to start with, but let's close with it, because obviously they're trying to negotiate a congressional budget right now, and it's kind of not going as expected. Just explain these numbers to us.
These are not These numbers are a problem. So this is the deal that Mike Johnson has finally unveiled. And, yeah, we could have spent the whole show just on this.
Yeah,
But,
we'll do more on it next week.
I got a couple in summary, let me you just look at that. 4.5 trillion in tax cuts. Increased spending by 300 billion. Most of that is for migrant deportations. Okay? Spending cuts 1.5 trillion. Most of that is from Medicaid and student loan forgiveness stuff. Okay. But it's a small amount, relatively speaking. So those numbers don't add up to the deficit coming down. In fact, if you do the math, that explodes the deficit. So here's the problem that you're going to have is that you got a group of 12 to 15 Republicans, hardcore budget hawks that absolutely do not want to explode the deficit. Then you have Donald Trump and Mike Johnson who don't care all that much about the deficit. They say that they do, but they don't care. They want the tax cuts and they want spending for what they want, and they could not care less about the deficit.
But
Republicans have a 2-seat majority in the House.
Yeah.
They got a 2-seat majority. So I have been following this very closely, those 12 to 15 Republicans, and they are pissed off at those numbers. They are not happy. And Trump, and keep in mind, the Democrats are not bailing the Republicans out on any of this. And so I can foresee a government shutdown. And you're going to have Republicans try and blame Democrats for the shutdown because they refuse to vote for this package. But really, it's going to be what's going to cause the shutdown is going to be a handful of Republicans who are upset about the deficit and who will not go along with this. They like the tax cuts. Sure, they do. But they want very deeper spending cuts. They want Social Security. They want many other things to be cut. They also want defense to be cut, foreign aid, you name it. Yeah. So I don't think that this is going to go well for Mike Johnson at all. And I think that most of the fighting is going to be between the Republicans, and the Democrats are going to sit back and do nothing and just let them fight it out. And I think that the only way that this is going to get resolved is if Mike Johnson goes to Jeffries, because I don't think he's going to either Mike Johnson is going to go to Jeffries and make some kind of a deal, or Donald Trump is going to start threatening people and they're going to get in line. But yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure somebody like Chip Roy or Ralph Norman or any of these Thomas Massey or any of these deficit hawks are going to vote for something that adds $3 trillion more to the deficit.
I will wager that the latter of your choices will be the way. I think that there'll be pressure from Trump. He'll threaten to primary people. He'll threaten to humiliate them, and they'll fall in line. I just see this authoritarian regime as exactly that, and they do not take no for an answer. And I think that even some kind of long,
I wouldn't bet against
Republicans,
you. Right? I wouldn't bet against you.
We'll see. But even these long-serving Republicans, this is a whole new type of leadership for them to have to manage, and they will be crushed. It's truly testing times. It is not a democracy. It is something different. I'm not sure what it's called right now, but we will continue to investigate. Ron, I am grateful to you for your work. Don't forget, you can read Ron at Midas Touch, at the Midas Touch Substack, Midas News Plus, so make the effort to do that. You can catch me on Sundays on the weekend show, where this weekend I've got a really exciting guest, so I'm looking forward to that. And if you missed my interview with Ro Khanna, the Silicon Valley congressman from last Sunday, please take a look at that. We'll come back next Wednesday and do it all again. Catch the podcast. It drops later tonight. Ron, I'll see you next Wednesday.
Okay, you got it.